All right, so I was on DB while YCS Bologna was happening, and then in a matter of hours, the entire landscape shifted, and now Runick Bystial is everywhere. We're gonna talk about ways how this deck can outplay you, and how you can outplay them by knowing all about the deck, the weaknesses, where to disrupt it, and what some of the cards do that you maybe didn't really think about. So if you like this video, make sure to like it, and let me know if you will want me to make more on this topic when it comes to the top meta contenders. Let's go ahead and get started. So I have a bunch of cards written over here. We're gonna talk about a lot of things, but the very first thing we have to talk about, the card that is literally probably the MVP of the deck, is Duality. Now this card, I wasn't kidding. You know, I've been on DB, and I cannot tell you how many times they have Duality. So what you have to do is keep Duality in mind, because it is literally dodging targeting negation. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's read the card. Tribute one light or dark monster, and you special summon one light or dark monster from your hand or extra deck with the same type and level, but a different attribute. So you essentially tag out because it is cost, and you get to summon something else. So immediately when you would be trying to use your Veilers, Impermanences, your Mourners, they can just dodge it. And then you just sit there, you win minus, and it's really, really sad. So think about Duality, and with that in mind, you know, with the Runick Bystial deck, what you would usually be trying to do is you want to disrupt Hugin in some kind of way, because you just don't want them to have access to Fountain. It is really important for their deck to function, obviously, so they can play their quick plays from the hand during your turn when they draw into them. So you want to deny them access with Fountain being at only 2, but now with Duality, it's really risky to use your targeting negation on Hugin. And you also need to keep in mind that they play pairs for most of the monsters. So for Hugin, they're gonna have the Alvain, the Essence of Vanity, which this card, we need to talk about this card. We'll do this a little later. So moving on to Gatti, they have the Fabled Unicorn, which actually has a good effect. So essentially, it's gonna negate all cards and effects that you activate as the opponent and destroy those cards while you guys have the same number of cards in hand. So your Runick opponent is always going to try to keep the same amount of cards in both your hands, because they can just play cards during your turn. So keep in mind, if they make this, they're gonna make your life miserable. It's just what's up. So just think about it, like try to, I don't know, get rid of the cards as soon as you can, like maybe even set stuff. Like you would be setting just spells and traps if you have space and then activating them. It's gonna be a little weird, but just keep that in mind. And then they also have the Golden Cloud Beast Malong, because it is level 6 light dragon, so they can tag out their Bystials mainly. And essentially this card also has an effect. If it's sent to the grave, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, return it to the hand. So you want to make sure, it says if it's sent to the graveyard, you can either bounce it or you can banish it, but just keep in mind that this card is going to trigger if they tag out and summon this with Duality. So there's that. The card is really, really busted. It can dodge a ton of things because they have targets, like I said, so keep that in mind. Now, we talked about targeting negation. It's great on Hugin. You want to deal with Hugin, but how do you do that now? And the answer is actually Ash. Now, you want to be denying them access to Fountain. We already established this. But then why not Ash Fountain? The issue is that they're going to try to chain block it as soon as they can, as best as they can. Like, they're gonna try to establish a chain block, and they can do this in multitude of different ways. They can either use Regained, because if they used any kind of spell that they're not special summoning, if they're using the second effect of their Runick spell where they actually banish cards off of your deck as well, then on the next chain link one Fountain, chain link to Regained, if they hit any of your lights or darks, which is actually really like realistic, because you can run Nibiru, Veiler, Diabellstar, stuff like that, so they can chain block it that way. They can chain block it with Quem, for example, with Hugin on summon, like they've been doing. So Ash is kind of weird, but if you Ash Hugin, it's really good because they're going to usually do it in draw phase. So they're special summon, because with Hugin, they also want to play around the draw. So what you want to do is you want to Ash it, deny them access from Fountain. Again, it's at 2, so it's less of a percentage for them to see it. And you also don't turn on talents or anything that they might play. They usually don't. Like their non-engine is usually just Ash, but it's just really going to depend on how people build their decks. So yeah, Ashing Fountain is of course ideal, but if you feel like they're gonna chain block it or make it impossible for you, ashing Hugin is also really good. Or in just a simplified game state, of course you want to deny them for from getting a draw with duality, because duality also has a second effect that is as if the first one is not good enough. It also recycles their lights or darks. So essentially, if you ash that part of the effect, they will have no way of recycling their Hugin, for example, that got banished with a Bystial, with, you know, the intention of putting it back into the extra deck. And they have a limited amount of Runick cards. They have like 4 monsters in the extra deck because it's really tight. Like, they do not have space. So if you deny them access, they're gonna run out of resources. And of course, there's also the regained 1 card draw, which you can also ash if you feel like that's what you want to be doing in that particular moment. There's obviously also Quem. You want to deal with Quem as well, but it's a little weird because it's a tuner on its own. So while it's on the field, even if you negate their send effect, they're still going to have the tuner, and sometimes that's even too much. Like you just negate it, fine, they'll just make Tri-Edge Master and just continue going, or just go into a Synchrotan immediately. So it is not ideal, but something to keep in mind since we're on the topic of Quem. People are going to switch things up, in my opinion. I don't know, probably, because right now the established build, obviously that one, was not running the Grangignol package, it was just running Cartesia. But now people are testing stuff. They're gonna try to play Cartesia and Grangignol. And also we have the Golden Sword, so as well as Incredible Ecclesia. Some people on DB are also testing that, because right now not playing Grangignol was kind of a surprise factor, I guess, because your opponent played weirdly, not trying to negate Cartesia because he would just tag out. But now that people know that this is not played in the winning build, they might try to, you know, actually play it to sort of counter how your opponent is going to be thinking. So just keep in mind that builds are probably going to change, you know, as time progresses. So there is that. Next up, another really important card is SP Little Knight. This one is important because you can use it against them to threaten the field spell. This is really, really important, but they can also use it against you. Now, before I said we need to talk about the Peacock, essentially it is a normal monster, doesn't have an effect. Please don't let them make SP with it. It is illegal, and just keep that in mind, because sometimes if you leave them the fusion or any kind of synchro or stuff, the first action they're gonna do is they're gonna try to make SP, hopefully legally. And they're gonna try to bait your stuff, or force your stuff, I should say. So if you can, try to, you know, clear their entire board, because with Runick, you're probably gonna be grinding. So when you go into the battle phase, just make sure to get rid of the tuners or anything from the extra deck that's going to pose a threat for them to immediately make SP. So there's that. But on the other hand, of course, like I said, you can also threaten their stuff with your SP. What you need to keep in mind, though, is they obviously have cards that negate a monster's effect, that destroy a special summoned monster. So keep all of that in mind. If you make IP and then go into SP, that's a little better, but again, they can threaten your IP. Also with Bystials, because it's very free to just summon it and threaten IP immediately. So keep all of that in mind, but of course, try to make sure that you get rid of the field spell. So obviously, how you do that is with Cosmic Cyclone. It's really, really good because Hugin protects from destruction, not banishing. And by now, all of us probably know this, but if you go Harpies and they have a free extra monster zone, they're just gonna chain from the hand, special summon Hugin, and protect on resolution. So don't try to Harpies unless you are 100,000% sure they will not be able to protect, or if you like negate Hugin beforehand or something like that, then you're safe. Other than that, just use Cosmic Cyclone. So next up we have Droll. Like I talked about before already, Droll is not going to be able to be used in the draw phase. So if your opponent is good, they're gonna play in their draw phase to summon Hugin, to get the search, or to activate Tip or something, and they won't play into Droll. So just keep in mind what phase you're in, so you don't just throw a Droll down and then you're like, oh, we're still in the draw phase. I literally just showed you my Droll. That's cringe. Don't do that. So make sure you're in the main phase. If they're activating anything, they're still gonna be able to add a ton of cards to hand and draw a lot. So if you draw them, you will still deny them from many things, even if you do it during the main phase and after they already have gained some advantage. So they're gonna wanna draw with their field spell, obviously, Tri-Edge Master, Duality, Regained, and multiple times with the field spell probably. So like they're gonna add a ton also with Magnamut in the end phase, which they can add from the graveyard. But if they don't have the targets, because they don't play a lot of Bystials, again, you're able to deny them from that as well. So Droll is really, really powerful. Just make sure when you are using it. Another hand champ that's good is Shifter. If you make everything get banished, they won't have resources in the graveyard. They want to revive stuff with Quem. They want to have attributes for Bystials, as well as, of course, their cards for fountains. So just throw down Shifter. If your deck can play under it, it's really good against this deck. Okay, moving on to some other hand traps, we also have Bell. Bell is really nice because it's essentially really good in almost every situation where Ash would also be useful in. So like you can Bell the Fountain effect. You can also Bell the Duality effect to draw, which would put back. Those are niche situations though. I wouldn't say Bell is the greatest. Like you can use it on Quem if you want, on the Revive effect, obviously. On the Revive effect of Regained as well. But again, like those are just situations. I wouldn't say it is the most impactful hand trap. If you play it because of Labyrinth maybe, and you feel like you don't have impactful cards in your deck, then you can just side those out and put Bell in if you feel like it. Then you can also use your own Bystials if you want, because we actually play Bystials to counter other decks in the meta as well, and some people even main deck them, so you can find uses for them since you're just going to be able to chain, call the same target, make sure their Bystial doesn't get summoned so they don't get a level 6 body. You summon yours, which is preferably Magnamut, so you get to your Juris Worm, or just Juris Worm, so you threaten something on your turn. So Bystials are okay. It's just a little weird because if they have access to Despotted, if their hand is just insane, you're just gonna banish something that they bring out with Despotted. So, you know, just keep that in mind. They can recycle their resources from the banish pile because of course they can. So that's important. So let's talk about how their deck is actually, what their deck is looking like. What is their non-engine? Now we saw Ash in the winning deck list, and sometimes they will play like just generic stuff or really impactful stuff like Nibiru and the likes. But a lot of times you just need to keep in mind that they probably won't be running those cards. Like realistically, they're playing Ash and that's pretty much it. So when you're up against this deck, or if you know after a couple initial plays what your opponent is on, then you're able to not make your plays weird by playing around things that aren't really there. So don't try to make your turn, you know, playing around targeting negation. Of course, if you're going first and they don't have Fountain already set up, because they do have targeting negation, but just don't play around Veiler or something because they just don't run it. And of course, that's a little risky. Just keep in mind they don't have that much space for non-engine, so you don't need to make your plays awkward. Now, another card that they do play is Denko Seka, and I found it cool when Joshua was talking about it in his deck profile, how essentially you would want to side this going first against Labyrinth because they play during your turn, so you want to just normal summon Denko, prevent them from doing anything. So if you're a Labyrinth player, just keep that in mind. People might start doing that and you might want to just try to play before they actually commit to the normal summon. If you don't really care, you can just do your effects in the standby phase as opposed to the end phase. So there's that. And also another card I wanted to talk about is Magic Deflector. This one has always been nice against Runick decks, so that's maybe something you can look into if you want. It is a trap card, a little bit more slow, but I still wanted to mention it. So what they're ending on is something along the lines of Baron, a Despotter for a potential negate if they banished monsters when they were using their Runick cards off the top of your deck. And there's obviously their myriad of different Runick spells in their hand, which you need to keep in mind. And the Bystials if they pose a threat to you. So that's pretty much what the field is looking like. But again, you're in there for the long run. You are grinding and you need to... If you feel like this deck is going to be highly represented, just play a deck that's actually able to go up against this deck and not run out of your resources really quickly. You wanna keep in mind you're gonna be playing actual back and forth games, usually for the most part. And of course, they have to skip their battle phase. I think this is very, very basic knowledge when it comes to Runick decks, but I did want to cover all the basics, so there is that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I covered something, and now by the end of watching it, if you're still here, thank you very much. And by the end now, maybe you learned something new, and it's going to help you when you're up against the annoying Runick engine next time. So make sure to give the video a like, comment your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.